Hello, I'm Chuck Wolfe, Chief Executive for Charles J. Wolfe Associates, LLC. As a motivational speaker and a leadership consultant and executive coach and trainer, I often work with very successful people in their companies. Since many can't afford a professional, I volunteer to host a radio talk show called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on a nonprofit community radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, WPKN. My reason for doing the show is to share with as many people as possible this wonderful process for helping people manage their own emotions and their relationships with others. My goal is for everyone listening to learn to use the Emotion Roadmap to make life better. As you listen to me, help others, I hope you are also learning. As a Simsbury resident, I'm delighted to be able to make the show available through Simsbury TV. To learn more, go to my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. Thank you for listening and watching. This is Chuck Wolfe, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the Carl Frano show, as I always do on my ride into WPKN. Anyway, I wanted to just tell you what the topics are for today and tell you a little bit about the show in case you're a new listener. And again, thank you to all of you who are regular listeners that like to call me when I'm here at the show. And I will give you the phone number in a minute in case you want to call in and you've got something you want to ask me about. The show's called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel. And again, I'm Chuck Wolfe. And the show's all about helping people to understand how to be smarter about how you deal with emotions, how you manage emotions, how you understand emotions, how you use emotions, and how you can be smarter about identifying emotions in others as well as in yourself. The show is based on the science of emotional intelligence, but it's also the conception of an emotion roadmap, something I came up with some years ago, which is this idea that when you're not feeling something helpful, you can still learn from what you're feeling, but once in a while you'll experience a feeling that isn't particularly helpful for what you're trying to get done. And if you're able to realize that the feelings you're having are not conducive for what it is you're trying to achieve, and you understand from listening to this show that there are better feelings, more ideal feelings that are better suited for what you're trying to get done, and that you can change to those more ideal feelings, and that listening to this show helps you to understand how you do that, then life's better. That's my experience, that life is actually better when you understand this concept of an emotion roadmap, how to move from one feeling that isn't particularly helpful to a feeling that's much better, even ideal. How do you do that? And what I find is when smart people are stuck, in my experience as a leadership coach, as a management consultant, working with teams, helping people to deal with change, to adapt to change, to manage large-scale change. In my work with very emotional, challenging situations, what I find is that smart people, when they're stuck, they're almost always stuck because something emotional is happening, either inside them or in the people that they're dealing with, that are key to whatever it is they're trying to get done. And by focusing on the emotions, sometimes magic happens. New options appear that seem impossible to come up with any other way than simply spending some time learning about and understanding how to use this concept of an emotion roadmap. The emotion roadmap has 4 key questions to it. It starts with you explaining to me or to somebody else or to yourself a situation that you're grappling with, that you're uncertain about, where you have some doubt about how to proceed. Again, usually with smart people, when they're stuck, it's almost always because something emotional is happening. So the questions are, so what is it you're feeling? Based on that situation, what is it causing you to feel? And if there's someone key, 1 or 2 or even more people that are key, what is he or she or they feeling? Now, this is based on your best assumptions about what people are currently feeling. And then ask yourself, what would be ideal to feel? If I could make magic happen and make the feelings appear that I really want right now, what would they be for me? And what would they be for the key people that I'm dealing with? What would be the ideal feelings? And then once you understand what you are feeling and what would be ideal to feel for you and for others, you think about the idea of getting from one place to another. That's the concept of a roadmap, getting from one feeling to another feeling. how do you do that? That's understanding emotions. And then you and I, if you call in, we explore the possibilities of how might you get from feeling anxious to confident, from feeling irritated to calm, from feeling betrayed to trusting. How do you do that? How do you actually make that work? And that's where understanding emotions, part of what I can help you with, is the science of emotion. And the other part that you can help me with is how do you deal with certain situations? When have you had any success in your life dealing with being anxious and then turning that into confidence? Or feeling betrayed and somehow finding a way to trust a person who has betrayed you at some point? Have you ever had some past experience that we can learn from about you so that we can craft a strategy, a plan to help you to move from your current feelings to the feelings that you want instead? That's what the show's all about. So welcome again to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. I'm Chuck Wolfe. I'm your host, and I'll be here until 5 to 1. So if you have something that you've waited for me to talk with, to call me about, give me a call, and I'll give you the number a couple of times. And if you had no idea what you were tuning into and you're listening for the first time, but you got something on your mind that's unresolved, where you're really not sure what to do and how to move ahead, and you want some help and you think the Emotion Roadmap could possibly help you out, feel free to give me a call as well. The number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And I'm looking forward to talking to you today. Now, I always come in with a couple of topics in case people aren't ready to call. But I always like to give you a little bit of time because sometimes you want to spend a moment thinking about what you want to call about and how to phrase it. And by the way, you don't have to use your real name, but I do like to address people by name, so pick your favorite name, somebody you always wanted to be when you call me, and I'll call you by that name when we're talking. But anyway, I also want to talk about a couple of topics, and I'll give you those topics in a moment. But right now, I'd like to give you a moment to think about if you would like to call in. And so I'll just be quiet for a moment and just remind you about the number and then give you a minute or two to think about if you want to call in or not. The number is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. Okay. I don't like to wait a long time because I don't want to leave a lot of dead air on the radio. But if you've got something to call, again, 203-336-9756. In the meantime, you may want to call with something about one of the topics I'd like to talk about today. Again, I'd like to have a couple of topics I think that are worth addressing and see if people are interested in them. We're coming upon summer. It's soon going to be summer. We're actually seeing some summer-like weather here in Connecticut for the first time in a while. And sometimes, for many people who have children at least, summer represents a time for vacationing. And one of the things that I thought would be somewhat fun to talk about today and somewhat uplifting is to think about and share when you've been on vacation in the past, what made vacation special for you? In other words, when you go on vacation, what are the feelings that make it special for you? What kind of feelings do you want to generate? And what are some ideas for vacations that you could share that were great for you that other people might benefit from hearing about? Now, some vacations obviously cost a lot of money. And a lot of people don't have a lot of money. So if you have some really nice ideas for vacations that you didn't have to travel real far and you didn't have to go and spend a lot of money on fancy places, but you did some things that you thought were great, either when you were growing up or as an adult with your own family or just with another person. What were those experiences about? How did they make you feel? And what caused you to feel that way? So I'm looking for some ideas for people that don't necessarily cost a lot. But I also am happy to hear about wonderful vacations that you spent a ton of money on, but you really felt it was worth it. Not everybody has a lot of vacations that they spend a ton of money on. And some people go all the time because they're very wealthy. And fine, call up and share something that you think, if somebody can afford it and you thought it was wonderful, what was wonderful about it, and tell us a little bit about it. And it'll give people some ideas who have saved up a lot of whatever money they have to spend on one big, wild vacation that they'd like to take, or some wonderful vacation they'd like to take. Or again, anything that you might have done that's local and not expensive, and just something really enjoyable. So let me start it off a little bit, just telling you a little bit about when I was growing up. I grew up in a working class home, and my dad and my mom had enough money for us to have, food, clothing, and shelter, but not a lot more. But when we went on vacation, we used to pile in the car. I grew up in Massachusetts, and we would go on vacation. We'd often go to Maine, or we'd go to New Hampshire, and occasionally we go to Vermont for vacation. It's interesting. I never really came to Connecticut, but we usually go to these other places, and we'd go and we'd visit, and we'd stay in a motel, hotel, 2-star, 3-star kind of place, and we'd visit caves, and we'd visit mountains, and we'd go to lakes, and it was great. And one of the things that was great was my dad was always a lot of fun in the car. My dad used to love to sing, and he was really funny, and he was a great storyteller. And so just being with my dad and my mom and my brother, I just have one brother, and I was the older brother, so I was in charge most of the time, so that was kind of cool for me. Actually, I have a great relationship with my brother these days, and I'm so very thankful for that. Not everybody can say that. And so anyway, we used to go on vacation. So my brother and I in the back seat, my mom and dad in the front. My dad's telling stories or singing songs. We're listening to a little bit of the radio, but mostly it was my dad kind of being the entertainer, and he was great at it. And that was an amazing time, just being with family. And I have wonderful memories from that. The other thing we used to do that I thought was fun was my mother's and father's family were from a place called Revere, Massachusetts. And at the time I was growing up, my father, who was one of 8 children, had most of his family lived within 5 miles of where I was growing up when I first started out in life. And my mother's family, same thing. She was only one of 3 children, but all her cousins and family, they all sort of lived in the Revere area. And so it was great. But then we moved to what was called the South Shore in Massachusetts, and I moved to a place called Sharon, Massachusetts, which, by the way, if you know anything about the New England Patriots, they play at Foxborough, Massachusetts, and Sharon's the next town beside it. So anyway, in Sharon, we were like a million miles, it seemed, from where I had started out in life, which is in Revere, where all our relatives were. So one of the things that we used to do on vacation a lot was we'd take the ride back and stay with my grandparents for 4 or 5 days. And I would get to see all my cousins and all my friends. And again, not expensive, not very far, but a wonderful vacation time. So those are things that don't always cost a lot. And there were things that I really enjoyed, and it kept me close to family, which I grew up believing is the most important thing in people's lives. And so those are some thoughts that I had about vacations that I really enjoyed. And the reasons I enjoyed them was because I love my family. And my family always felt like they loved me. And so it was enjoyable. We didn't have a lot of money to spend on things, but just walking around town, playing ball, playing catch with a baseball, playing stickball, going to the beach. Revere has a beach. We used to go to the beach. We like to go in the summertime and go to the Atlantic Ocean. It didn't cost a lot of money, and it was just really fun to be with family. And that was great. Or when we go off into one of the other New England states and we take a ride just with my dad, mom, and my brother and I, it would be just wonderful together time. So again, I hope that just listening to that triggers some memories for you and some of the vacations you might have had as a child. And the thing that I'm hoping to trigger here is the idea of I'd like to make you feel like vacation time coming up isn't a burden, isn't a chore, but can be really wonderful and doesn't have to cost a whole lot of money. Take the wheel and control how you feel. The show's about that, and so I like to think of strategies to help you with that. So if you've got something around vacations that you could talk to me about and you want to call in and share your story, and it helps you just to remember kind of a wonderful time in your life, I'm sure your sharing that will be uplifting to others. So that's another nice way to help people just to feel nice about the day and about the time that's ahead of us. I realize not everybody takes vacations in the summer. Not everybody has school children and is on a calendar that's based on the summer. But for a lot of people, it's true that they are, and so that's why I'm talking about it now. The other topic I thought I'd share and see if people wanted to talk about has to do with work. Because at work, sometimes there's a concept called mentoring, that if you're lucky enough to have a mentor and you have a story or two to share about someone that's mentored you or when you've mentored someone, I'd appreciate hearing about that as well. Because I think it's a misunderstood concept for a lot of people. I think that companies don't also get it. I don't know that when you assign somebody a mentor, that it really works the same way as when it kind of naturally happens. Sometimes it can. But let me talk to you a little bit about what a mentor is. A mentor is someone assigned to you in the workplace or someone you gravitate towards because you've met them and they seem incredibly helpful to you and they know things that you don't about how to get ahead, how to deal with conflict, what the norms are in the organization that you've joined. Often they're older than you. They don't have to be. They can just be more experienced or somehow more knowledgeable. But typically they're older than you, and they're someone who has experienced some of the things that you're experiencing for the first time yourself. And in helping you to understand what you're experiencing, they help you to minimize any mistakes you might make in terms of overreacting to things that cause you concern or seem like they're upsetting to you in some way, because they might help you to explain why things have happened in a way that makes you feel much less upset and even okay with a situation that for whatever reason you didn't understand. But they also help you to think about how to grow your skill set, how to advance in the organization, how to get along with key members of the organization. They're really good for all kinds of things. But if you've got some stories about people that may have mentored you, it'd be useful to hear about them as well. And again, I'll tell you about one of my own, just again as a way of getting you started. And then I hope to hear from some of you today, because it's always a lot more fun to have conversations with people rather than me just talk. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you today was one of the people that mentored, well, I actually had several mentors. So let me start off with the very first one that I had. It was my first real job as an adult when college was finished for me. I had gotten a bachelor's degree and I'd gotten a master's degree. And I got a bachelor's in psychology and then a master's in counseling. Oh, we got a caller, so I'll take that. Hi, this is Chuck Wolfe. You're on the air. Who am I talking with?
Hello, my name is Stephen from Bridgeport, and I wanted to make a brief comment about mentorship.
Okay, thanks, Stephen.
So I myself is in the electronic field, and took electronics in high school, and then 2 years afterwards, and then went into the field. And I find that mentorship is actually where I learned most of my trade. And now that I am on my own and self-employed, I realize actually even at my age 50 or so, I still miss the mentorship of having people around to learn from and follow and take advice from. So that's one unfortunate thing about being self-employed, is you miss out on that. And on that same note, in trying to hire some younger teenagers to work with me, I find that when I speak the words to them about mentorship as being part of their wage, they kind of look at me funny and don't quite understand where I'm coming from, where I'm saying, like, if you stick around and listen and learn and look over mine and other people's shoulders, you'll actually learn a lot more. And then they put their eyes back on their phones. I'll leave you with that note.
Well, actually, let me ask you a question about it before you take off. So, because I think you and I said sort of the same thing in the beginning, which is I don't think mentorship is understood very well.
No, it's a lifetime.
Right. And so when you talk about being mentored by others, tell me more about what that felt like and how it happened. How did it take place?
It's funny.
And then maybe my point to you was, Stephen, is just that I think in your explaining it more, maybe anybody else that's listening will have a better grasp of it.
Well, I didn't realize, what I find is I didn't realize I was being mentored at the time.
Interesting.
It was me taking upon myself to go seek knowledge and go look over. Even when I was younger, as a young kid, I realize now that when some older brother or somebody was working on a car, I was the first one to be there to ask questions and take it upon myself to want to be mentored and to show the interest. And I realize if you don't show the interest or don't ask the questions, then there's really no mentorship going on. It's just you watching somebody. There's no back and forth. And on that note, what the first I would say, let's say, real manufacturing company I worked with, even though it was a small company, they really didn't have any training in place for the technicians. And they're like, well, you just learn as you go. I'm like, well, that doesn't make much sense. So I used to take it upon myself to walk around the factory and ask questions, and if I had a problem, to go to the engineers and ask for instructions. And, I remember actually getting talked to by some of my superiors, like, Steve, you're in the engineering room an awful lot. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to learn? You don't assign anybody to me. We don't have any training classes. And they're like, well, you seem to be the only person to do this. And I said, well, I guess I'm the only one interested. And soon I was with that company for 20 years.
Interesting. Now, I would wonder if you would call that mentoring, because mentoring to me is a little different in that you have one or two people that you go to regularly, and maybe that happened along the way, but it seems like you had this inquisitive nature that kind of propelled you to wherever you were with whomever you were talking. If they had information or knowledge that you might be interested in learning about, you were asking everybody.
Yes, and I found that. But if you interact with people showed interest and did it respectfully, and sort of, I don't want to say belittle yourself in front of them, but show them that you know more than I. You teach me. That people would take to that well.
And so people would look forward to talking with you and helping to educate you?
Exactly,
right?
because they noticed you were listening. That's one thing I noticed when I would make the attempt to train other people. I noticed if they didn't show the interest or they weren't asking questions, then I felt like, well, I'm just wasting my time.
So the key to learning, because again, the show's about take the wheel and control how you feel. If you want to get ahead in organizational life, in any kind of endeavor, really, you're talking about a specific situation, but it's the idea of going and seeking out and being inquisitive and curious and really listening to what somebody who has some experience and knowledge you don't have, and making them feel appreciative and valued, and then they begin to care about you. I mean, does that sound right?
I couldn't say it better. Other than I used to use when I would tell people, I used to use a little sort of, I don't know, I guess I was in a sentence saying, if you really want to know what's going on, go find the grumpy old guy chewing on the cigar and listen to him. If you want to learn something, find the grumpy old man in the corner and ask him. And that's what I miss about That's what I miss about hardware stores. There's no more grumpy old guy in the corner.
Yeah, that's interesting. Hey, listen, just an idea for you.
Now you have Home Depot with all these young people around.
See,
that's where I have learned, as years go by, to have some respect for the older person. They may not want to share with you right away, but if you open up and respect that they have knowledge and make it aware to them that you realize that they're not just an old person doing the same thing again. I find that if you give them some respect, they'll teach you.
Well, one of the things that you had said is you missed having the opportunity to be mentored. And
yes, I do.
And one thing that I might encourage you to think about is being on some kind of advisory board at local, either, I don't know whether it's a church or a community organization or something else that might pique your interest. But if you find yourself on a board with other people who are also sophisticated and know what they know about their worlds, there might be something, it sounds like you're a really curious guy, that you might find really fascinating and interesting and want to pique their brain. Not that they're going to tell you about how to do work anymore, because I think you got that nailed, but it's more about just something else that might intrigue you. By being on a board with other people, you're going to find people like yourself who also enjoy sharing, and you might actually become a mentor to somebody on the board yourself, or find somebody else to at least have conversations with that feel a little bit like what you might have enjoyed when you were younger.
That's a good idea. Because I do find myself being self-employed. Let's say, I feel like I'm in a bubble all the time. I seem to, a week can go by and I haven't left the house.
Yeah.
When you have a home office. But,
right. No, I'm self-employed too. Same thing.
Yeah, and I realize how much I miss the interaction sometimes with other people in the not only just working. I found that my work was that was also social. I miss out on some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Being self-employed. But part of mentor, like I wanted to say though, part of the mentorship was not just work because of what I do. Since I'm in a service industry, I'm constantly dealing with new people and new customers and having to, I say sometimes, play psychologist with people because that's part of getting their equipment fixed is first getting them to be happy because something's broken.
Right.
And that's difficult. And it took me a long time to listen to other people and let them say, listen, this is, you have to realize people are mad when they call you, just so you need to be the calm one.
Right.
You need to be the driver to make sure to let them know that we're going to get to the end in a happy ending with everything, even though things aren't good now. And I find that I had to really, that was my hardest things of learning and listening to other service guys saying, this, I have to admit, I have never been to many seminars. I went to one service seminar, and I found that it was very, very intuitive, instructional, and I really usually don't believe in these seminar things, but this one was wonderful. As I went, I left it saying, the more positive aspect you have on the phone with somebody, the more that's going to come back at you, and to really be, once again, be the positive aspect on the phone with somebody when you're providing phone service.
Okay, so see, if the show's called "Take the Wheel," Emotion Roadmap, take the wheel and control how you feel, and so you just said you need to be the driver. You need to understand that people are mad when they call you because something's broken, and so you want to this is perfect for what the show's about, right? Because it's about how do you help people feel the way you want them to feel.
You're not happy when you go to the auto mechanic because your car doesn't work. You're already upset.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's up to him, also to play a little psychology and to make you feel comfortable, because otherwise you'll just go someplace else because you're already upset.
That's so true, and that's why certain people do lots and lots and lots of business, and people rate them really highly and brag about, I've got the best mechanic anywhere.
Well,
right?
What I've learned, and I don't care what industry you're in, if you're in the service industry of fixing something, it's normally not about fixing the product; it's about servicing the customer. Fixing the item, that's the job already known. That's whatever it is you do, that's what you do. You but taking care of servicing the customer is the more difficult of the two.
Well, that's music to my ears, because that's what I'm talking about. I think the better we get at understanding the emotions that are in play in any interaction with people, especially emotionally challenging ones, the world's a better place if we're paying attention to this stuff, I think.
The number one reason why I get repeat customers is because I usually take the time to I'll spend 15 minutes on the phone with a possible customer, not even knowing if they're going to be my customer. And I will say, half the time we may not even be talking about the subject, because I find it very important to really build a minor friendship with somebody. Then we'll talk about the problem.
Well, I'm very glad you called, Stephen. It's really been...
You have yourself a wonderful day. I'm going to continue to listen to your show.
Thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Okay, so that was great. Thanks, Stephen. And if you've got something else that you'd like to call and share, something that either about mentoring, a mentorship, or an experience that you've had, or something that has to do with vacations, because again, I think the vacation is coming up for a lot of people, and a lot of people struggle with how am I going to afford a vacation, and it becomes something of a burden. And I'm hoping that people share some ideas about vacations that might be kind of easy to do and fun to do, and just things that you remember yourself, because I think as you remember things about vacation, just like the conversation with Stephen, it's kind of like as you talk about these things, you remember some very nice things that have happened in your life that you've been a part of, where you've taken some lessons, made them your own, and when you own something and you're better at whatever it is you're practicing, and it feels right and it makes other people feel better having dealt with you, then I think you're doing your part to make the world a better place. So if you've got some ideas that you want to share and you want to give me a call, again, I'll give you the number a couple times and I'll wait a moment. 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. Okay, let me tell you what I was starting to say about some mentoring experiences I had. One of the times that I had a person who mentored me was when I went to the state of Iowa. I went to Iowa to work after spending most of my entire young adult life in Massachusetts area or in New England, and then I wanted to get out and see other parts of the country. And my wife and I had a wonderful experience one summer. We took a van, and my uncle converted it into a camping van, and we traveled across the country for 8 weeks. And seeing other parts of the country was amazing. I mean, again, a vacation for 8 weeks, but we actually did that, and it didn't cost that much because we landed up in many different parks across the country for just a few dollars. They'd allow your van to pull in, and you could camp, and you can often have a place to eat and shower and use the bathroom. And it was something you can do today. You can just, if you have the time, and you have something that you can convert to a camp, some kind of camping camper, you can take off and just see a lot of this incredibly beautiful country. One of the vacations I had was in the recent years. We haven't driven to these places, we've flown, but and then rented a car, went out and saw some of the most beautiful national parks in the world in this country. So we been to Bryce and Zion in Utah. We've Monument Valley, Yellowstone. There's so many beautiful parks. That we've been out to Arizona and we've been out to Utah, the Grand Canyon. There's just so many great things to see that really don't cost a lot in terms of once you're there, and just it's mostly about hiking and so forth. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hi, Chuck. My name is Karen Jackson.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, I'm in Bridgeport. I just want to give you some ideas on vacation. I'm from Jamaica. I'm from Montego, Jamaica, in particular. And when I go back home, I use my Jamaican passport so I can get a cheaper price at a hotel. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's what I do.
Okay.
But also the main reason why I'm calling is because I rent a beach house. And you don't have to be a Jamaican citizen to get the price, but you rent a beach house, a 4-bedroom beach house. You have a cook there for breakfast and mainly breakfast. Or you can pay someone $150 American, and they'll cook you breakfast, lunch, and whatever else you would like. And the 4-bedroom is $1,500 for the whole entire week, and then you have the extra payment for someone to cook. So if you can go with a family,
yeah,
it works out. And you're by the beach. You can come out 2:00 in the morning in your birthday suit, and no one will care, and no one will know. And it's your own privacy. You don't have to worry about someone else in the lobby. You have your own place.
That sounds great. So are there particular beaches in Jamaica that you're talking about where that you like?
Beach, St. Elizabeth side is very quiet, very private. But St. Elizabeth, Treasure Beach, Black River. Black River has Wyatt Falls. Everybody talks about Dunsville Falls. That's nice. But Wyatt Falls is much more beautiful. There are deeper, better spots to explore, less people.
Nice.
But Treasure Beach in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica, is one of the quietest, private places to go to and get a nice beach house.
St. Elizabeth is the first one you said, right?
St. Elizabeth, yes, and Treasure Beach is in the same parish. Port Antonio is also good, which is on the other side of Jamaica, but it's a little bit more expensive. But on the south end of Jamaica, where the beaches are, you have beach houses, 4 bedrooms, going for $1,800 for the week, and that's what you will pay in hotel fees and the comparison it doesn't even relate to the privacy that you get. So I just wanted to just
thank you so much, Karen, for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right.
I appreciate WPPKN, and I appreciate you. Appreciate that.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate your listening and calling in. Thanks, Karen. You have a great day.
You too. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Okay, folks, so you just heard about going to Jamaica and finding a vacation place on the beach that's much more reasonably priced than anything you might pay if you just look online or something and go to a hotel. And 4 bedrooms allows for a family to go and spend a week for $1,800, I think, or possibly even less, I think Karen was saying, in certain places. And St. Elizabeth's was the first one she mentioned. So something to think about. Thanks for calling, Karen. It's fun to think about going to these places and how it makes you feel when you find something that you really like. Okay, so I started to tell you about mentoring. So for me, my first job, I had traveled around the country, and we saw such beautiful places, and we thought about going back and maybe living in a place for when I was finishing my master's program. My wife was already teaching, but she was willing to move out of Massachusetts and kind of see where life took us. So we ended up going to a little town, living in that tiny little town of 105 people in the Midwest in Iowa. It was called Durango. And Durango, Iowa is, as I said, about 105 people at the time we lived there. 105 people in the whole town. But we worked in a bigger town that was called Dubuque, Iowa, and that's a town maybe you've heard about. And what's interesting about Dubuque is it's very different than what you might think about Iowa, in the sense that Iowa is very flat land for the most part, tends to be highly Republican and very Protestant in general. But Dubuque is very different. It's very hilly. There's a lot of bluffs. It's mostly Catholic, at least at the time we were there, and it's very Democrat. And it sits right on the corner of Wisconsin and Illinois. In fact, East Dubuque, which is another town, is actually in Illinois. It's right across the Mississippi River, so it's all on the Mississippi River. And where my wife and I lived was right on something called the Little Maquoketa River. So we lived in this amazing rural area that someone from Massachusetts coming from suburbia knew nothing about, but it sounded like a great idea. It was at a time when, moving back and living off the land sounded pretty interesting. And anyway, so we went out there, and my first job, and reason I went out there was because I wanted to be doing, and this is interesting considering what I'm doing today, all these years later, I wanted to be doing affective education, it's called. Today, very similar things are called social and emotional learning. And while we didn't have the science of emotional intelligence then, we had programs that were teaching children way back then in the 1970s about how to deal with their feelings. So the fact that I'm doing a radio show in 2018, when I had started as a guidance counselor in schools in 1972, so that's how old I am, folks, going back a long ways, my first job, living in a new place in a different part of the world, because the Midwest is really a lot different than living close to Boston. I can tell you that. And we were living in farm country. I never had any experience other than driving through it of being in farm country. And so here we were, surrounded where we were living by dairy cows on one side and beef cows on the other, and across the street all kinds of hogs and corn everywhere. Because corn was planted. Even though it's hilly, they still planted lots of corn around. So we had an experience that was totally new to us, and I was working in a school system for the first time as a guidance counselor. My goal in going to Iowa, the reason we went out there was because, I don't know if you remember this, but years ago, Iowa was famous for the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. Iowa always was known for their excellent school systems. And I had trained in Brookline, Massachusetts, which, if you know Massachusetts at all, Brookline is also an extremely well thought of school system. And Brookline had, at the very early stages, elementary school counselors. And the elementary school counselor was someone who would work with young kids in their classroom instead of one-on-one for children with problems. They would try to work with teachers and kids all at the same time to educate everybody about the counseling tools that we had been trained to use in my master's program. And Iowa had one of the best affective education or emotional intelligence programs anywhere in the world at the time that I moved out there and lived out there. And that's when I went to work out there. And the woman who mentored me was an amazing facilitator, a woman named Kay Helbing. And I'll tell you more about it after this phone call. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Good afternoon, Chuck. My name is Robert.
Hi, Robert. Thanks for the call.
Hi. Hey, I want to relate my experience and see what input you can add to it.
Sure.
I've had emotional problems all my life.
Okay.
And I have always thought that my emotions were an indicator of some danger around me or something. Now, I'm 60 years old now, much later in life now. I realize that there are biological factors, particularly in my case, a protozoal infection from a cat called toxoplasmosis that skews my emotional reactions. And I realize now that my emotions are not reliable. My emotions do not tell me the truth about what's going on around me. And I react in ways that are inappropriate to the situation.
Okay.
So I just wanted to put that in there. I think I have some relief later in life because maybe I have more pause now because I have an emotional reaction to some situation, and I have to stop and think, is this a valid feeling that I'm having, or is it the basis of the protozoa in my bloodstream or in my brain redirecting signals, giving me false information?
Right.
You know, and so I'll just leave it there. I have some comfort realizing that I can't trust my emotions, but that'll help me navigate. I do more evaluation rather than just saying, oh, this doesn't feel right, I'm going to leave. I have to say, well, it doesn't feel right, but why doesn't it feel right? Is it me or is it the situation?
So
I've just learned that recently about the toxoplasmosis protozoa infection. A lot of people get it from cat feces, believe it or not, just breathing the dust when you clean the litter box.
Well, okay, so I can't talk about that disease. I don't know that disease, but let me tell you what I can talk about that relates to your situation. And first of all, congratulations on being so in touch with this, because I'm sure it took you a lot of time and a lot of years to get to the place where you understand what's happening to you, to the point that you
a lot of wasted relationships along the way.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of struggle and challenge trying to get to this place. But it sounds like you're at a decent place with it in terms of at least understanding that you can't trust your emotions right away without at least questioning them and trying to understand, is this a legitimate response to what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So that's really good that you got to that place, and I just want to support you in having made that journey. And I'm sure I haven't lived that life, but I can imagine how challenging that was. And so congratulations on that part of it. But let me relate this to you in another way that I think might be helpful for you. So one of the things that I've discovered is, in having spent time with the people that were the pioneers of this idea of we have emotional intelligence abilities, what I want to say is even without the chemical reaction to the cat and so forth, where you've had this kind of experience, I have found that certain people are really poor, just naturally poor, at identifying what's happening around them, and yet they think they know.
That's me.
Okay, what's what I'm saying. So I don't know. This is without any kind of disease. This is just a natural. It's kind of like this is a pretty good analogy, I think. If I ask people, are they good at math? And somebody says, yeah, I'm pretty good at math. They're usually thinking, well, I can add and I subtract and divide and multiply. But pretty good in math might mean to somebody else that you can do calculus, trigonometry, geometry. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are we really talking about when we say you're really good at identifying emotions? Some people are incredibly accurate and really never miss a beat in terms of what's going on inside themselves as well as what's going on around them. Other people, and they don't always know this, are often pretty clueless. And yet they're reacting as if they know, and so they're operating on poor information.
Yeah.
And I've actually written a little article about this, about, what if, years ago when we used to think kids weren't smart, And yet there was something about certain kids that said, you know what, this kid is smart, but he's just not learning like other kids are learning. What's going on? And we realized at the time we were calling them learning disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only maybe 30, 40 years ago that we discovered that kids could still be smart and yet not learn the same way as other kids. And so I think that's true about emotional intelligence as well. I think you can be smart in different ways. And some of the parts of emotional intelligence you may not be smart in. And you're not smart, and maybe it's because of this disease, that in certain ways where you're not sure when a feeling shows up for you, what feelings are supposed to do for us, if they're working correctly, they're supposed to inform us. They're supposed to give us information about what's happening in our environment. Should we be scared? Is that person or that animal going to attack us? Or is that person someone that's warm and caring? And should we be open and trusting? Do we make that choice based on how we're feeling often? And so,
or is that person a manipulator looking for
exactly
who's easily abused?
And that's
I don't know if I can trust people sometimes because of that.
Exactly. So my point is, I think there's a lot of people that struggle with this for different reasons. You're at least in touch with the fact that you sometimes, and maybe a lot of the time, misread what's going on.
Very true.
And so you've found some compensating strategies to challenge yourself, because and maybe you don't have to do this all the time, but if it's something important and the stakes are meaningful to you in some way, then you want to make sure that you have other ways of testing what's really going on here. And I think you already got your own strategies for that, but I want to point out that you're far from alone in this. But I think so many people aren't aware that they're not able to read other people correctly, or even understand their own feelings. And so the fact that you're in touch with that and able to learn more about it, I think is a plus. And I don't know that you see it that way, but I want you to understand that this is actually, I know it's taken a long time and it's been pretty painful along the way, but the place you're in is not a terrible place. You're actually in a good place compared to lots of people that don't even know that they don't know.
That's why I'm listening to you, because I am looking for strategies to be more successful,
So let me suggest there's a book out there called The Emotionally Intelligent Manager. And you can learn a lot about what I'm talking about in this show by going there. You can also go to my website, theemotionroadmap.com, and you can see some things there as well. And for what it's worth, if you want to read the article it was just a couple of pages. It was published in a United Kingdom journal online and in print. But I can send you a copy, a PDF. If you want to send me an email, my email is it's CJ for Charles James and last name Wolfe, WOLFE, at CJWOLFE.com. If you want to send me an email, I can send you that article if you want to read it. But if you also want to just buy the book, you can buy it at Amazon, The Emotionally Intelligent Manager, and you can learn a lot about, all the different parts of emotional intelligence, and pay particular attention to what you learn about identify and ways to get stronger. It has strategies for you in there. So I think that might be helpful to you. Okay,
thanks. I'm gonna go.
Okay.
I'll keep listening to you. Thanks for doing your show. It's very helpful.
You bet. Thanks a lot for the call. I appreciate it. Bye-bye. Okay, so great. So anyway, I want to thank my callers, but I also want to just tell you the last part of this idea of mentoring was, for me, I had a woman named Kay Helbing. And when I went out to Iowa, I was told that I could get to be the first elementary school counselor in the state of Iowa with grant money, but I'd have to first work in a junior high school because the position wasn't available. They were looking for a grant that they were hoping to get funded, and they had promised me the opportunity to work in that way, and that actually did happen. But my first couple of years I was working in a group where people didn't just have one-on-one counseling sessions. They actually had sessions where they brought kids in small groups. All the kids met with the guidance counselor, and you actually talked to them about emotionally challenging situations they were likely to face. In junior high school, having moved from elementary school where it's a lot more caring and nurturing, there weren't middle schools then. There were just elementary schools and then junior high schools. So junior high was 7 and 8. That still exists in some places, but many places now have elementary, primary, and then they have middle schools and then high school. So anyway, in my situation, I was working with 7th and 8th graders, and I was being trained how to deliver emotionally intelligent sessions that help kids to think about, the situations they were likely to face. So challenging school assignments where they might feel overwhelmed and they were with a bunch of new people because you left your elementary safe community where you were on top of the world in 6th grade and you knew everybody, and all of a sudden you mix with everybody else from a big town where you didn't know lots of other people. You're trying to find your way, and you have all these different courses. You move from class to class. You don't have one homeroom teacher, and it's, so kids were challenged emotionally. Some kids rose to the occasion very easily. Lots of kids did okay, and a number of kids struggled. And so we wanted everybody to understand what the emotional challenges were and how to deal with that emotionally in the most effective ways. And we'd bring groups of kids together and ask them about their experiences and talk to them about that and about other things like, dealing with all of a sudden they're wanting to be with the opposite sex, or being faced with the choice of people who wanted to introduce you to drugs or alcohol. And we had, things along that nature where we would, talk about situations, get the kids to role play it. It was a really wonderful education about social and emotional learning to help kids to deal effectively with challenges. And I was working for the first time in a setting where I was a full-time employee, and it was a very conventional school, and I had been in college, and Brookline was a very progressive school, I guess. And so what I was used to doing, the way I was used to operating, wasn't a great fit. I'd come from the East Coast to the Midwest. The East Coast was progressive, and West Coast tend to be very conservative. And I was struggling a bit, not with my skill set, because I was smart and I was good at what I did, but in trying to get along with people. And I had a woman, Kay Helbing, who took me under her wing and was gentle and caring and supportive. And even when I'd get defensive, she'd say, "Okay, I can understand why you'd feel that way. Tell me more about what that's about, and let me see if I can help you understand why it's different here." And she would have a calming effect, and she would have a socializing effect, and she would be teaching me about the norms of the place that I had entered, which were new to me. And by the time I was through working with her, I was so much more skilled and settled and understanding. And it was because she took the time to mentor me. She was as good as I was, and I thought I was pretty good, and even better because she had the experience, and she helped me to be better. She helped me to be the best me that I could be. So let me leave you with that. If you have the chance to mentor somebody else, and they're coming into you, and they're pretty talented, and they want to learn, and they want to grow, but sometimes they're defensive, you can be supportive, and you can be caring, and you can be nurturing and understanding, and you can guide them. And they can learn to trust you, and they can learn to be open with you. Then you can be their mentor, and it's a wonderful, gratifying experience on both ends when it really works. So thanks, everybody, for listening. You've been listening to Chuck Wolfe. This is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And I want to thank my callers. It was Karen, who told us about Jamaica and St. Elizabeth Beach, and Stephen, who talked about his mentoring experiences, and Robert, who talked about a situation he's had, which a lot of people face and don't even realize it when they have poor emotional information coming into them, and they're acting on what they think is truth, and they're not. Interesting. More to come. I'll be back next week. Again, this is Chuck Wolfe. You've been listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. WPKN 89.5 FM in Bridgeport, serving Fairfield, New Haven, and Litchfield counties in Connecticut and Suffolk County in New York, as well as communities around the world via podcast and streaming at WPKN.org. If you've missed any of my shows and you want to listen, please go to SoundCloud or Stitcher. Those are the easiest places to find the shows. And just type in Emotion Roadmap. You can find them on iTunes, but it's more of a struggle, I find. Or you can just go to WPKN.org and you can find them there. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.